Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. The King Who Lost His Queen. In a town built on illusions, Clark Gable and Carole Lombard found something real. A love stronger than Hollywood's brightest spotlight. Clark Gable, known as the King of Hollywood, was admired for rugged charm, charisma, and unforgettable screen presence. Carole Lombard, the queen of screwball comedy, radiated warmth, wit, and light, a combination that perfectly complemented Gable's intensity. They first met in the early 1930s on the set of No Man of Her Own, but romance bloomed years later at a Hollywood party. Their courtship was simple yet joyful. Evenings spent at their Anino ranch, wearing comfortable clothes, sharing laughter, and savoring quiet companionship. Far from studio noise, in 1939 they married, forming one of Hollywood's most beloved unions. Gable often said Lombard grounded him while she affectionately teased him, calling him Pa, noting that his happiness could be won with kindness and coffee. Their love seemed unshakable. Tragedy struck in January 1942 when Lombard died in a plane crash during a war bond tour. Gable, devastated, rushed to the site and carried the grief deeply. Shortly after, he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces, his mourning wrapped in patriotic duty. Carole remained the great love of his life. When Clark Gable passed in 1960, he was buried beside her at Forest Lawn Cemetery, fulfilling a lifelong wish. Their story reminds us that even legends have fragile hearts and true love can endure beyond the brighter spotlight, leaving a quiet but lasting mark on history. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall when film turned into forever. Some love stories begin with fireworks. Theirs began with a whisper, a look, and a moment frozen in film history. In 1944, 19-year-old Lauren Bacall walked onto the set of To Have and Have Not, nervous and unknown. Humphrey Bogart, already a major star in his mid-40s, carried intelligence, dry humor, and a quiet intensity that drew people in effortlessly. From the first scene, something sparked. But Call's now famous line, "You know how to whistle, don't you?" wasn't just movie magic. Behind the scenes, glances lingered. Smiles lasted longer than expected. Crew members later recalled a silent connection, present yet respectful. Bogart was married at the time, and Hollywood scrutiny made public romance risky. Still, their bond grew through letters, conversations, and shared moments that felt rare in a town built on performance. By 1945, after personal circumstances changed, they married. Their life together became one of Hollywood's most admired partnerships. Quiet dinners, sailing trips, evenings spent reading, and a steady private companionship. Bacall later said, "No one ever made me feel as safe." Their love faced challenges. Bogart's long hours, illness, and fame's pressures. When he fell seriously ill in the mid-50s, but Call stayed by his side. He passed in January 1957 at 57, leaving her heartbroken yet grateful for their years together. Their romance was not defined by glamour, but by loyalty, friendship, and devotion. Proof that even in Hollywood, love can be sincere, steady, and unforgettable. Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier. Brilliance, fragility, and unbreakable devotion. Some love stories shine like diamonds, beautiful, rare, and sometimes impossible to hold without breaking. Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier first met in the mid-1930s. Two rising talents defined by elegance, ambition, and artistry. Leigh was on the brink of global fame, soon to become legendary for Gone with the Wind. Olivier was already gaining recognition as one of Britain's finest actors, carrying the charm and intensity of a born tragedian. Though both were married at the time, their connection grew through rehearsals, letters, and a profound emotional understanding. In 1940, after years of quiet devotion, they married, becoming one of the most admired couples of their era. Together they captivated audiences on stage and screen, their performances marked by electricity and emotional depth. Yet, behind the brilliance, Leigh struggled with severe mental health challenges little understood at the time. Olivier tried to support her while balancing his demanding career, but the pressures of fame and personal strain gradually wore at their marriage. By the late 1950s, the toll became too heavy. They separated quietly in 1960, later divorcing, yet retained respect and lingering affection. Vivian once said, "He was everything to me." And Olivier admitted he never fully recovered from their parting. Lee passed in 1967, and Olivier continued performing, carrying a quiet reverence for the woman who had been central to his life. Their story reminds us that love can be powerful yet fragile. Even the greatest talents cannot always escape the weight of human vulnerability. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, the legend and the quiet devotion. She was adored by millions yet longed for peace. He was a national hero, yet never felt bigger than his love for her. Marilyn Monroe, born Norma Jean, rose from a difficult childhood to become one of Hollywood's most recognized stars. With charm, vulnerability, and luminous presence, she embodied classic glamour in the 1950s, captivating audiences worldwide. Joe DiMaggio, already a legendary New York Yankee star, was admired for quiet discipline, modesty, and devotion to family. Their worlds could not have been more different. One filled with camera flashes, the other with ballparks and calm routines. They began dating in 1952 and married in January 1954, dreaming of simple life together. Yet, fame's gravity soon intruded. During the filming of the 7-year itch, Marilyn's iconic subway dress scene drew thousands of fans, clashing with DiMaggio's wish for privacy and quiet. Within 9 months, they quietly divorced. But their connection endured. Over the years, DiMaggio remained a steady presence. When Marilyn faced emotional struggles, he offered support privately. After her passing in 1962, he arranged her funeral with care and sent roses to her resting place for 20 years, never remarrying. Their love story was quiet, tender, and sincere. In a world obsessed with fantasy and spectacle, they found devotion that transcended headlines, a reminder that true love can live in silence and steadfast care. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Fire, passion, and the love that returned twice. Some love stories are like storms, intense, unforgettable, and impossible to control. Elizabeth Taylor was already one of the world's most admired actresses by the early 1960s. Known for striking beauty, emotional depth, and a screen presence that made every role feel alive. Richard Burton, a commanding Welsh actor, brought Shakespearean intensity, sharp wit, and a voice that resonated both on stage and screen. They met on the set of Cleopatra in 1962. Both married at the time, their connection ignited public fascination. Headlines erupted, Vatican remarks were issued, and the world watched as on-screen romance became real-life passion. Their bond grew, and in 1964, they married, becoming Hollywood's most talked-about couple. They traveled the world, starred in celebrated films including Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and shared a love of literature and jewelry. Burton famously gifting Taylor the historic Taylor Burton diamond. Yet the intensity of their love brought strain. Career pressures, personal battles, and Burton's struggles with alcohol created friction that fame could not soothe. They divorced in 1974, remarried in 1975, and separated again in 1976. Despite the splits their connection endured, Burton wrote Taylor heartfelt letters, once saying, "I love you," in desperately hopeless ways. Taylor later described Burton as the love of her life. Their story shows that some hearts meet not for peace, but for passion, leaving echoes long after the world grows quiet. Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne, Hollywood's first great tragedy. Before legends like Monroe and Taylor faced heartbreak, Hollywood witnessed an earlier tragedy, one that stunned the industry in its golden youth. Jean Harlow, the original platinum blonde of the 1930s, rose from modest beginnings to become one of MGM's brightest stars. With charm, comedic timing, and a magnetic presence, she captivated audiences in films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8. Beneath the glamour, she was warm, playful, and generous. A woman shaped by both talent and heart. Paul Byrne, a respected MGM producer, was known for intelligence, refinement, and a quiet demeanor. In July 1932, they married in an intimate ceremony celebrated as a promising match between rising star and studio executive. But only 2 months later, tragedy struck when Byrne was found dead at their Beverly Hills home. MGM stated he had taken his own life due to physical difficulties, a reflection of the era's wish to protect reputations. Hollywood remained largely silent, and Harlow returned to work under immense strain. Though she continued acting brilliantly, friends noted a quiet sadness lingered. Just 5 years later, in 1937, Harlow passed at only 26, leaving fans and colleagues heartbroken. Their brief marriage became one of Hollywood's first reminders that behind silver screen glamour, real lives, and heartbreak unfold, marked by fragility rather than scandal. Judy Garland and Vincent Minnelli, a star searching for home in a world built on fantasy. Judy Garland spent her life searching for a place where love felt safe, warm, and real. Judy Garland began performing as a child, her voice carrying both hope and longing. By the late 1930s, The Wizard of Oz transformed her into one of Hollywood's most cherished stars. Yet, behind her radiant smile stood years of studio pressure, exhaustion, and a yearning for emotional grounding, something fame could never fully offer. Vincent Minnelli, a visionary director known for elegance and artistry, met Judy while preparing Meet Me in St. Louis in 1944. Garland felt an unusual calm around him, and Minnelli admired her talent as a gift rather than a commodity. Their creative connection grew into affection, and in June 1945, they married, welcoming daughter Liza Minnelli a year later. For a time, Judy found the homelike stability she had always longed for, dinners at home, quiet evenings, and a sense of belonging away from cameras. Yet, pressures persisted. Garland's struggles with exhaustion and studio demands deepened, and Hollywood offered little understanding of mental health. Minnelli, devoted to his work, could not shield her from burdens that began long before they met. Their marriage grew strained, and by the late 1940s, they quietly drifted apart. In 1951, they divorced, though without bitterness, remaining connected through Liza and mutual respect. Their love was not defined by grand gestures, but by tenderness. Two artists briefly building a quiet world together. The warmth they shared lived on, especially in their daughter's accomplishments and continued tribute to both their artistry. Audrey Hepburn and Mel Ferrer. Grace, devotion, and the heart behind the halo. In a city fueled by applause and illusion, Audrey Hepburn searched not for admiration, but for a love calm enough to feel real. Audrey Hepburn's rise felt like a fairy tale. After her breakout role in Roman Holiday in 1953, Hollywood embraced her as the embodiment of grace. Soft-spoken, elegant, almost angelic. Yet, her serenity came from a life touched by hardship. Growing up in Nazi-occupied Holland during a World War II, she faced food shortages, fear, and the quiet trauma of survival. These early trials shape her gentle strength and deep longing for emotional safety. Mel Ferrer, a refined actor and director, entered her life that same year during rehearsals for Ronin. Ferrer admired Hepburn not just for her beauty and talent, but for her humility, rare in Hollywood's glittering chaos. Their creative connection grew into affection, and in September 1954, they married. Ferrer encouraged her career and helped her believe she belonged among the stars. Together, they formed a partnership rooted in discipline, artistry, and a shared desire for stability. Their greatest joy arrived in 1960 when Audrey gave birth to their son, Sean. She often said motherhood mattered more than any film role, cherishing quiet mornings and simple routines. Yet pressures soon surfaced. As Audrey's career flourished, Ferrer slowed, and ambition, insecurity, and distant schedules strained their bond. Despite efforts to hold on, differences grew heavier than hope. In 1968, they separated and later divorced, choosing dignity over conflict. Their story was not a Hollywood tragedy, but a gentle chapter in two lives shaped by art and longing. Audrey carried forward what she cherished most: kindness, motherhood, and grace, showing that even in a world obsessed with glamour, the softest hearts often seek the quietest love. Rita Hayworth and Prince A. Khan. A fairy tale with shadows. In a world dazzled by beauty and dreams, Rita Worth discovered that even a fairy tale can carry shadows that love alone cannot lift. Rita Worth rose to fame in the 1940s as one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars. Films like Gilda made her an icon, but behind the screen presence lived Margarita Canino, a shy girl shaped by years of dance training, reinvention, and studio demands. She longed not for admiration, but for tenderness and belonging, a quiet life beyond mares and endless publicity. Prince Ali Khan, son of the Arkan and a prominent figure of international society, met Rita at a dinner party in 1948. Charming, worldly, and strikingly charismatic, he offered attention free. From Hollywood's casting rooms, romantic letters, grand gestures, and European elegance. They married in May 1949, becoming one of the world's most talked about couples. And Rita became Princess Rita Worth, welcomed into royalty with flowers and cameras. At first, life glittered. The couple settled in France, and Rita gave birth to their daughter, Princess Yasmin, in 1949. Yet, the fairy tale soon cracked. Ali Khan's social lifestyle, demanding travel, and public flirtations clashed with Rita's wish for stability. Rumors, loneliness, and emotional distance slowly pulled them apart. By 1951, their marriage ended and a custody battle followed before Rita returned to the United States with Yasmin. Rita later said she had been tired of being loved for a fantasy. Her time with Ali Khan showed that even royal stories can ache with loneliness. She left with grace, choosing motherhood and self-worth over titles, a reminder that glamour fades, but dignity remains. Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier, a screen legend's final curtain. Sometimes the most radiant dreams ask the highest price. And Grace Kelly's fairy tale crown came with a quiet longing that never fully faded. Grace Kelly's rise in Hollywood during the early 1950s felt almost mythical. With porcelain elegance, poised grace, and a calm presence unlike any other star of her time, she captivated audiences in films like Rear Window, Dial 'Em for Murder, and To Catch a Thief. Her acting carried delicate strength, modest, refined, and deeply emotional. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1954 for The Country Girl, cementing her status as one of the era's greatest talents. Yet, behind the polished exterior, Grace often yearned for privacy and a life beyond studio demands. Fame was a chapter, not a destiny. Prince Rainier of Monaco, seeking to secure his principality's future, met Grace during a photo shoot in Monte Carlo in 1955. Their meeting, poised, polite, and quietly fascinating, blossomed into letters, visits, and a romance that captivated the world. To Grace, Rainier represented stability. To Rainier, she embodied grace and refinement. Their union merged Hollywood royalty with a European crown. In April 1956, Grace walked down the aisle in what was called the wedding of the century, leaving Hollywood behind to become Princess Grace of Monaco. Palace life brought duties, public expectation, and creative sacrifice. She missed acting deeply, yet embraced her role with dignity, supporting charities, cultural programs, and family. Though the world saw a fairy tale, Grace quietly told a friend, "I never really left Hollywood. Part of me stayed behind on that screen." Her story reminds us that even the most enchanting dreams carry trade-offs, and true grace lies in navigating them with quiet strength and devotion. Spencer Tracy and Catherine Hepburn, companions in the quiet. Some bonds are not written in headlines or vows, but in steady loyalty, shared purpose, and the comfort of simply being understood. Katharine Hepburn entered Hollywood in the early 1930s with fierce intelligence, independence, and a spirit ahead of her time. Sharp-witted and graceful, she challenged the studio system rather than conforming to it. Her talent and presence in films like Alice Adams, Bringing Up Baby, and The Philadelphia Story made her a symbol of strength and authenticity. Yet behind the applause, Hepburn sought a deeper connection, one built on trust, humor, and honesty. Spencer Tracy, already one of Hollywood's most respected actors, carried quiet power on screen. Performances in Captains Courageous, Fury, and Boytown established him as a Man of depth and conviction. Off-screen, he was private and loyal, valuing discretion over glamour. When Hepburn and Tracy met on the set of Woman of the Year in 1942, colleagues noticed an immediate ease between them. Hepburn later said, "I knew right away. I just knew." Their companionship lasted nearly 25 years, marked not by public display, but by gentle constancy. Tracy, married and living separately, never divorced. And Hepburn, out of respect, kept their bond private. She supported him through health challenges and quiet moments, balancing her spark with his humility. Their final film, together, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, in 1967, captured decades of subtle intimacy. Tracy passed shortly after, and Hepburn chose silence as an act of respect. Their story was not one of grand declarations, but of quiet companionship. Two souls finding comfort in each other's presence in a world of bright lights and applause. Their bond lived in the stillness, private, gentle, and profoundly human. Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner. Love, loss, and unanswered questions. Some love stories shine brightly, return again and again, and still leave the world wondering what truths linger beneath their final chapter. Natalie Wood grew up under camera lights. As a child star in the late 1940s and early 1950s, she carried warmth and emotional depth beyond her years. Films like Miracle on 34th Street, Rebel Without a Cause, and West Side Story lifted her from promising newcomer to cherished Hollywood star. Though adored on screen, she longed for stability, a life where love felt safe, steady, and real. Robert Wagner, rising through studio ranks in the early 1950s, possessed classic charm and polished elegance. Known for dramas and romantic films, he was the poised, refined leading man of his era. Natalie admired him since her teenage years, and when they met, their connection felt inevitable. They married in 1957, becoming Hollywood's picture-perfect couple, admired for grace, glamour, and seeming harmony. Yet, even beautiful partnerships face pressures, busy careers, outside demands, and personal stresses strained their marriage, and by 1962, they parted ways. Times softened the hurt, and in 1972, they reunited, marrying again with greater maturity and understanding. Friends described their second union as tender and committed, built on lessons learned and love rediscovered. In late November 1981, tragedy struck during a weekend boat trip near Catalina Island. Natalie Wood drowned under circumstances still debated. Authorities ruled it an accident, and the industry mourned a brilliant life lost too soon. Wagner, devastated, remembered her privately, honoring her memory. Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner's story is one of devotion, reunion, and enduring mystery. Their bond held passion, reconciliation, and shared history. A reminder that love can endure, despite distance, tragedy, and unanswered questions. James Dean and Pia Angeli. Love the world wasn't ready for. Some loves burn quietly yet powerfully, not in grand declarations, but in moments that linger long after the world has moved on. James Dean arrived in Hollywood in the early 1950s like a spark in dry air. Intense, thoughtful, restless, and wildly talented. With East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant, he became a symbol of youth, vulnerability, and raw emotion. Behind the rebel image, however, lived a sensitive soul who sought tenderness, understanding, and a sense of belonging. Fame came fast, but what Dean truly craved was connection, not applause. Pia Angeli, born Anna Maria Pierangeli, embodied grace and quiet beauty. Rising. In the early 1950s, she enchanted audiences with gentle warmth and emotional sincerity. On screen, she glowed. Off-screen, she carried innocence and family devotion. When Dean and Angeli met at a studio in 1954, their chemistry was immediate. Friends recalled shy glances, long conversations, and the way they found peace in each other amid Hollywood chaos. They escaped to beaches, late-night talks, and quiet dinners. Yet, pressures loomed. Studio opinions, cultural expectations, and family influence shaped their lives. Pia's family favored stability and tradition. while Dean lived fueled by artistic passion and restless independence. In November 1954, Pia married singer Vic Dione, and Dean reportedly watched her leave the church from across the street. He carried her memory quietly. Less than a year later, in late September 1955, Dean's life ended tragically in a car accident, leaving audiences mourning a star whose story felt unfinished. Pia Angeli later said James Dean was the love that stayed in her heart, a chapter that never fully closed. Their story was brief yet profound, a reminder that some connections are not measured in years, but by the depth of feeling they leave behind. Robert Taylor and Barbara Stanek, the romance Hollywood never forgot. Some love stories leave no bitterness behind, only tenderness, loyalty, and a quiet echo that lasts long after the final curtain falls. Barbara Stanek rose through the 1920s and 30s with determination carved from hardship. Orphaned young and raised in foster care, she learned early that strength and self-reliance were her survival. Yet behind the steel, she carried a deep capacity for love and loyalty. With films like Stella Dallas, Ball of Fire, and Double Indemnity, she became one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, admired for talent, dignity, and discipline. Robert Taylor entered Hollywood in the mid-1930s as a striking young leading man. Handsome, soft-spoken, and sincere, he quickly rose to fame in films like Magnificent Obsession and Camille. When he met Stanek on the set of his brother's wife in 1936, their connection was immediate. Stanek saw kindness and steadiness in him. Taylor saw warmth and strength in her. Their bond was gentle, steady, and sincere. They married in May 1939, building a life far from scandal. Friends recalled evenings at home, shared laughter, and Barbara preparing simple meals, a grounding calm in a chaotic Hollywood. Their personalities balanced effortlessly, her intensity softened by his steadiness, his reserved nature encouraged by her courage. Over time, career pressures and differing paths loosened their bond. By 1951, they parted, not in anger, but with grace. They remained friends, exchanging calls and holiday notes, each quietly respecting the other. When Taylor passed in 1969, Stanek mourned deeply, later calling their connection a beautiful friendship that never really ended. Their story endures not for scandal or drama, but for its quiet truth. Love can change shape without fading, and real connection often lasts long after the chapter seems closed. Joan Crawford and Francho Tone. Glamour and quiet heartache. Beneath dazzling gowns and studio lights, Joan Crawford searched for a love steady enough to quiet the storms fame could never silence. Joan Crawford rose from the 1920s to Hollywood royalty through grit, ambition, and unshakable will. From Grand Hotel to Mildred Pierce, she commanded attention. Elegant, intense, and fiercely determined. Yet behind the glamour lived Lucille Larsauer, a woman shaped by a difficult childhood and a longing for security, belonging, and love that felt enduring. Francho Tone, a refined stage actor and charter member of the famed group theatre, entered film in the early 1930s with sophistication and classical polish. When he and Crawford met during Today We Live in 1933, their chemistry was immediate. Crawford admired his intellect and poise. Tone admired her fire, discipline, and vulnerability. They married in October 1935, a union that briefly seemed like harmony. Ambition meeting artistry in Hollywood's golden age. Yet, pressures soon emerged. Tone came from a quieter theatrical world, while Crawford's fame soared. As her career climbed, he sometimes struggled under her spotlight. Industry whispers, clashing expectations, and differing rhythms chipped away at their connection. By 1939, they parted, not in scandal, but in sadness. Even after, they maintained respect. Crawford spoke warmly of Tone, supporting him during illness while he continued to admire her strength. Their story reminds us that even the brightest stars carry quiet needs, and that glamour cannot replace understanding. Their love flickered briefly yet sincerely, a connection not defined by failure, but by the gentle truth that some hearts meet at the wrong time, even when they match in feeling. Which of These golden age love stories touched you the most? The fairy tales, the heartbreaks, or the quiet, enduring connections? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know which story you'd like to explore next.